coming
black
up.
and I'm slow, so forgive me. Do you believe in God?
Well, what do you mean by God?
Do you believe in God?
Well, maybe.
You're not sure if you believe in God or not?
I perceive God as the totality of humanity, of the living material world.
You knew that Obama is the worst of the worst, but because of your dislike for the Republicans, you decided to go with the worst of the worst anyway.
I would say I may have known that Obama was the worst of the worst, but that actually the Republicans were the worst of the worst of the worst.
Amazing. I have with me Sam Seder. And Sam Seder is a comedian, actor, film director, TV producer, and radio host of the Majority Report. And I did a lot of studying on Sam last night, so it's very interesting. I'm glad that he's here. Sam, thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir. I want to talk to you about so many issues, politics, climate change, and all of what's happening in this great country. But I need to learn a little bit more about you. Are you a Christian?
No.
You're not. Are you an atheist? I couldn't tell. Are you an atheist?
No, I'm a Jewish person.
Oh, you're Jewish. And so what does that mean? I mean, are you a conservative Jew or a liberal Jew?
Well, are you asking? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Because we have liberal Jews and we have conservative Jews. I'm trying to figure you out a little bit more because I couldn't really.
Well, the nomenclature more for Jews in terms of like how we relate to the religion is Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, or Reconstructionist. I mean, those are the four main, I would say, dispositions towards the religion. Within that, there's obviously different divisions. I mean, I am more Reform and Reconstructionist.
And when you vote, do you tend to vote left or right?
I will almost in every situation vote against the Republican candidate.
And why?
Because I find their policies to be reprehensible.
And do you tend to vote for the Democratic candidate? The Democrat candidate?
I mean, it depends. In New York State, we have what is known as fusion voting. So I will often vote for the Working Families Party line. Sometimes that's the same, the Democrat. But I mean, I tend to vote to the left.
And did you vote for Obama?
Did I vote for Obama? Yes.
Both times?
Both times. Yes.
Now you're helping me out here. How about the Great White Hope? Did you vote for him?
The Great White Hope?
Yes.
Andrew Cuomo? Who are you referring to?
Donald Trump. The Great White Hope.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
vote for,
so
Donald Trump.
And why not?
Oh, he's horrible.
In what way?
Well, I mean, really, in almost every way. He's enormously incompetent. I mean, I think that's been quite clear.
In what way is he incompetent? Give me an example of him being incompetent.
Well, I mean, you're aware of the literally dozens of indictments that now his top people in his campaign were found guilty of criminal violations. I mean, you have multiple of his literally right-hand man who are going to jail. To me, that's incompetent.
But that had nothing to do with him.
Well, Jesse, I mean, if your producer, everyone you hired in your studio was sent to jail, that would actually make me think maybe Jesse's not so great at hiring people.
But
unless you're looking to hire criminals.
Do you tell your boss all your bad behaviors of the past?
Well,
when you were interviewed, did you tell your boss all of your bad behaviors?
I don't have a boss.
So how can you hold the president for that? Do you hire people?
Do I hire a party? Yes.
And do you ask them every detail of their lives or their past lives or all that?
I make sure that everything they're doing professionally that in any way touches my business.
But
whether
do you
I
ask
hire
them?
them? Yeah, well, like I'm saying, Jesse, I say I make sure that they have the most amount of integrity and ethics in the course of what their work is here, and I scrutinize it. Yes, that's part of my job as a manager. I mean, in fact, I take a lot of pride in the fact that the people who work for me are ethical and have high integrity and are competent. I mean, that is a measure of how I measure my own competence.
So you ask men and women everything about their past before you hire them.
I ask them about what they're doing within this office, and certainly, of course, I examine their past before I hire them. I mean, what boss wouldn't do that?
And do you think they tell you the truth about themselves?
I think that part of my skill set should be able to assess when people are being truthful with me. Yes.
Give me something real that can prove that the president is incompetent. So far, that's not good proof.
Okay. Well, I mean, you interrupted me when after I started to list the things. I started with his campaign manager and his personal lawyer of 10 years. Are being sent to jail. I would start with that. But in terms of other incompetence, look what's happening with North Korea. It's falling apart. They're starting to build another weapon. They're going to start to launch it again. If you look at what's happening with the auto workers in Ohio that he said he would be helping out. I mean,
Amazing.
They're in dismal shape right now. The whole trade. Oh, do you want me to stop?
Yeah, because of time.
Okay.
Because you sound like them on the left. But let me ask you.
I am on the left. I am them.
Oh, okay. So you would be a liberal Jew then, right?
No, I would be to the left of liberal.
Really, a socialist Jew.
Well, I would be of the left. I would be a leftist Jew, I think you could say.
Who would be a socialist?
Excuse me?
Which is a socialist Jew?
Well, I mean, I don't believe that we should fully democratize all the means of production. So I'm not quite that. But I am. I mean, I'm not. If it makes you feel more comfortable saying that, I'm perfectly comfortable with you saying that.
So, Sam, I don't quite understand. Do you believe in God or not? I'm black and I'm slow, so forgive me. Do you believe in God?
Well, what do you mean by God?
Do you believe in God?
Well, no, I heard you, but I mean, what do you mean by God? I mean, I think my conception of God might be different than yours.
And I'll ask you that after you answer the question, do you believe in God?
Well, maybe based upon your definition of God.
You're not sure if you believe in God or not?
Well, I'm not sure if you and I share the same definition of God, so I'm not sure that the question makes as much sense.
Oh, so you're not going to answer that question? And
it's really important. I can explain to you what my sense is of God.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you that.
I perceive God as the totality of humanity and the totality of living of the living material world, and in that sense, I believe that we owe those totalities respect. So I try and live my life in a way that shows respect for humanity and for the planet and the ecology and the environment. So does that answer it sufficiently?
I mean, I'm just seeing how I'm looking for how you see things. So if that's what you see, then I understand that. Why did you vote for Obama both times?
Because the first time it was because I feel that John McCain was, I didn't like his policies. I particularly found the idea that he would pick Sarah Palin as his vice president to be indicative of a genuine lack of integrity in terms of what his politics were. Frankly, and I was terrified at the idea that someone that incompetent would be in that close to the presidency.
How about the second time? Because of time, how about the second time?
And Mitt Romney, I find to be a particularly odious brand of vulture capitalist.
So, if I'm reading you correctly here, you knew that Obama is the worst of the worst, but because of your dislike for the Republicans, you decide to go with the worst of the worst anyway.
I would say I may have known that Obama was the worst of the worst, but that actually the Republicans were the worst of the worst of the worst.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So, Sam, I want to ask about this college admission scandal. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's sort of indicative of a lot of problems that we have in this country. That wealth inequality creates this dynamic where people, even in the tippity top, feel this undue pressure to excel and to have status. And they have the ability to have that much income where they can actually expend it in such a way that breaks the rules. I mean, I think that's a pretty apt metaphor for what's going on. Of course, the president is very much like that as well. But so I think it's a metaphor for some of the problems that we have in this society.
So it seemed to be mostly white men and women who are involved in this scandal so far. Do you think that if white people had spoken up to black people 70 years ago or so and caused black people to be responsible, work for themselves, not to receive free stuff, not to give them affirmative action, now they want reparations. If white people had insisted that black people maintain the same character that they had prior to the so-called civil rights movement, instead of giving them everything, now blacks are feeling like victims and white people are being pushed aside. Do you think white people would have to try to pay to get their children into universities had they not been forced to step aside and let black people in based not because they were qualified, but because they were black? Would white people have to find another way to operate if they had not allowed affirmative action and all that to happen?
So, Jesse, if I understand your point, and I almost totally sure I don't, you're saying that these people who bought their way onto the crew team had to buy their way on the crew team because of all the black people on the crew team or something like that?
Well, what I'm saying,
I'm not following.
What I'm saying is because black people and now the illegal aliens and Mexicans are allowed to get into these universities, especially the blacks. Based on color and not qualification. Let me just finish the question for you. It's based on color and not qualification. Most black people are not qualified to get into these universities and jobs and things because they are not earned their way. White people are earning their way, but their kids and others are pushed to the side and not allowed to get in because they're white to let blacks in. If that was not happening, would white people have to find other ways to get into universities and jobs?
Well, aside from not agreeing with the premise of what you're saying, even if I did, what you're saying is ludicrous.
In what way?
Well, first of all, you'd have to be arguing that these people who had to pay millions of dollars and had to Photoshop their kids' faces on the bodies of athletes were somehow otherwise qualified for university. I mean, literally, they went in and they had to have other people take their standardized tests because these people were horrible students. So even if I accepted the ludicrous premise that somehow undocumented immigrants are taking up all the spots
people you can say black too.
People that are taking up all the spots at elite universities, even if I was to accept that premise, which I don't. The idea that these people would otherwise make it into these colleges is just absurd.
Why would you say that? Because
they were
in California. In California, we had to end affirmative action because it was wrong to put these blacks in
that undercuts the premise of what you're saying, Jesse.
But they're still doing it, though. They're still doing it, Sam.
To end it.
And they're still doing it. And if you look around, most black people, all black people in these universities and these jobs are not qualified. In the meantime, they're there because of their color, to the point that even the Asians had to file lawsuits in order to get in because they were letting the blacks in, not because of qualification, but because of their color. Is that right for that to happen to whites and Asians?
Well, I mean, I don't know what you mean, but do I have a problem with affirmative action? In other words, do I have a problem with programs that allow legacy students in that may give kids from rural communities or other schools legs up, or kids from urban communities legs up? I mean, I haven't gone to a university like that myself, or a college.
Do you
My
have a problem with white people being pushed aside because of their whiteness to let Asians and blacks and others in, even though in many cases they're not qualified? Do you have a problem with white people being discriminated against based on color?
in certain circumstances, absolutely not.
Why not?
Well, look, I mean, and Jesse, I'm sure you know this, that this in our society, much of the wealth distribution, much of the access to all the things you need to succeed generationally have been denied systemically to people of color in particular.
Not true.
Well, it is true.
Not true. It's a made-up lie.
No, it's
I
not.
grew up on a plantation in Alabama under the
I'm
Jim Crow
very happy
laws,
for that, Jesse.
and
but
black
you-
people did better under the Jim Crow laws than they are doing today because they're being made to feel like victims. Are you okay if black people were being pushed
Jesse,
aside to let
can I
the
finish?
Yes,
can I
go
finish
ahead.
my point?
Yes, you can.
Surely you're aware of things like Social Security when it was developed, right? And of course, this was towards the later end of the Jim Crow era. The Social Security was developed as a compromise to the racist element in the Democratic Party at that time, which have since all moved to the Republican Party.
Not true.
No, that is true.
That's not true either. You guys are
historical
saying
facts,
these
Jesse.
things that are not true.
Well, it's true.
Why doesn't it bother you guys to say
can I
things that
finish?
are not true?
Can I finish?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So in Social Security, for a number of professions that at that time were held primarily by black people, were left out of the Social Security development. Things like home ownership coming out of World War II, the government would underwrite homes and actually have specific rules that these homes could not be sold to black people. This is in the 1940s. And as you know, Jesse, the biggest driver of wealth in this country is home ownership. And so if I systemically deny a segment of the population the ability to develop that home ownership and to develop that wealth, that's going to resonate for years and years to come, decades and decades.
But let me.
So
No,
your
that's not true,
experience-
man.
Your experience
not
in
true.
Alabama is borne out in some way by what we're talking about here, because in many respects, you would not have seen that wealth disparity at that time.
That's
But
not true
since
either.
that time, it has been exacerbated. And
When
and
I
the
was growing up in Alabama under the Jim Crow laws,
Mhm.
black people own land, they own homes. Some of them didn't even have to. I have an aunt and her husband. They had something like 15 kids under the Jim Crow laws. They own buku land. They own their own home. Their kids went to high school, went to school, graduated from college. All 15. Other members of my family had their own land. And when their kids grew up, they went up north and they all bought homes. They got jobs. And so-called racism was supposed to have existed then. It's just not true what you guys are saying.
What are those folks in your family doing now?
Working and raising their children to do the same
Even
thing.
though
But let me ask you this.
have, as a society, been victimized, been teaching them to be victims? How is that possible?
Because they don't listen to the lies from society. They have been raised by good parents and honest parents. But let me ask, if it's true about the housing situation, you remember when we had the market crash some years ago?
2008?
Everybody and their mom in the black community had homes and things, and some had more than one because they were given money and given loans by the bank. Banks were forced to do that, right, back in 2008.
Banks are not forced to do that.
and
You're
the-
talking about
and
the
the-
Community Reinvestment Act, and that is.
And let me just finish.
Oh, sorry.
And black people didn't pay back the home loans, and the market crashed. If blacks were capable of being responsible, why did they take advantage of that opportunity and do the right thing?
I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, Jesse, but I can tell you that, as you know, bankers, bank loan officers, that's what they're called. They're called officers, and they're called officers because they have a fiduciary responsibility to make good loans. And
Right, but blacks don't pay back.
well, let me finish, Jesse. My father, as an attorney, worked quite a bit in this area, and what he saw these bankers doing was appalling, both for white and black people, frankly, in terms of driving people into these loans. And now, in hindsight, we have obviously far more information about what these loan originators were doing in terms of shoving people into loans that the bankers, whose responsibility it is.
No, the banks were forced to do it by the black politicians and others by accusing them of being racist. But Sam, how much time do I have with you?
You have a couple more minutes.
So let me ask, are black people suffering due to the destruction of the family and the lack of morality or racism?
Well, frankly, I don't know that those are mutually exclusive.
Which are they suffered from?
Well, I mean, I think I
what's
just
the
answered
cause
you,
of their suffering? Because we all know in reality, we all know in reality there's no such thing as racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, deadbeat dadism, or anti-Semitism. It's all about good or evil, right or wrong. We do know that part, right?
We do?
Yeah.
Well, listen, as far as I know, we may not even exist. This could all just be a dream. Right? I mean, how do we know, Jesse, that we're even here?
That's a good point.
Maybe this is just a dream. Maybe it's not even your dream or my dream. It could be just some other random person's dream.
Is there such a thing as white privilege?
Is there? Of course.
And who do you know that is white and they get privilege because of their color?
Oh, me.
You do? But you're a Jewish guy.
Well, I keep it under wraps, Jesse.
Oh, they don't know that you're Jewish?
My cover.
They don't know that you're Jewish?
Well, you had to ask.
Well, you look white to me. I can't tell.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. And certainly, I mean, I have been extremely privileged.
So why don't you give up all your privilege to the black folks?
Well, I mean, I think that to a certain extent, from a societal perspective, I mean, I don't think me individually is going to be able to do that. But from a societal perspective, I think we should have we should rebalance things in many respects. Yes.
Sam,
I mean, the whole point.
Will you come again? We're out of time. Will you come again?
I certainly was. This was really fun.
I'd like to talk to you longer and take some calls. Everybody and their mama want to talk to you.
Yes, well, that'd be great. I would love to talk to them and their mothers.